Yo, what's going on? Mike from Mike Talk Sports. One of the bigger storylines coming out of the NFL this past week is Stefon Diggs and his potential fractured relationship with the Buffalo Bills and his lack of presence at the Bills' mandatory training camp. So it'll potentially be vital for other Bills receivers to step up to the plate. Even if Stefon Diggs ends up playing this season for the Buffalo Bills, it's still vital that they get production out of their other receivers. And in today's video, I'm going to be analyzing Gabriel Davis, the Bills receiver, going into his fourth season in Buffalo. And I'm going to be answering the question, can Gabriel Davis finally break out for that 1,000-yard season? I think a real quick backstory is necessary for Gabriel Davis when analyzing can he break out for that 1,000-yard season going into this season. So he was a fourth-round pick by Buffalo in 2020 out of Central Florida, and he had an incredible junior season after having somewhat of a quiet freshman and sophomore year at Central Florida. He put up 1,241 yards on 12 touchdowns as a true junior, flashing a significant amount of potential. And right away with the Buffalo Bills, he actually had a really nice role as a rookie. 35 catches, 597 yards on 7 touchdowns. So really a good, underrated, slept-on rookie year for Gabe Davis. Going into 2021, he was still a bit of an under-the-radar player. He ended up having 35 catches again in his sophomore campaign, 549 yards on 6 touchdowns. And at this point, I think Gabriel Davis going into the playoffs was starting to get a little bit of attention. He was starting to make a lot of noise in some dynasty leagues as a sleeper trade buy-in option for a potential breakout in the next season. And of course, this under-the-radar presence of Gabe Davis was absolutely shattered in the divisional round of this playoff run for the Buffalo Bills, as in the divisional round of last year's playoffs, Gabriel Davis absolutely exploded versus the Chiefs for a crazy 4-touchdown game. So Gabriel Davis really went from this really under the radar, slept on prospect that can end up breaking out for the Bills, but now he was on everybody's radar. Everyone was expecting huge things out of Gabriel Davis. I think people look back on his tape that year and said, man, there's something here. Plus that 4-touchdown game, he became a favorite in fantasy drafts last year going into the 2022 to 2023 season. But more importantly, the Buffalo Bills had significant expectations for Gabriel Davis to be that established potential star number 2 receiver alongside Stefon Diggs. So that brings us to last season. And last season, I was a big Gabriel Davis guy. I bought in on the hype. I had him in every single one of my fantasy leagues, and he quite simply did not live up to expectations. Last year, he had 48 catches, 836 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Certainly not a bad year from Gabriel Davis, but definitely a disappointing year. First and foremost, he suffered a pretty significant ankle injury at the very beginning of the season. He played through the majority of the season with this nagging ankle injury, and you could tell it was bothering him all year. What else? He really did not have that much self-improvement. There were a lot of positives about his game and a lot of negatives, and he really did not work to improve those negatives, and the inconsistency is absolutely still there for Gabriel Davis. So without further ado, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video. I'm going to be breaking down Gabriel Davis's positives and negatives, and I'm going to answer the question, could Gabe Davis finally break out in year 4? So getting into some of his positives, at times, he shows to have very steady hands with a very nice catch technique. Something that I like about Gabe Davis, once the ball is about 30, 40, 50 yards down the field on a deep route, he's actually really good at hand fighting with the cornerback to get into the proper position to catch the ball. He has a good job at creating space on the outside on his press release. He's certainly a better outside receiver than he is a slot receiver. He's going to be primarily operating from the outside. At times, he showed a really nice ability to actually high point the ball and box out his opponent in red zone situations in the end zone. The Bills certainly like Gabriel Davis' large frame. He's 6'2", 210 pounds. He ran a 4.5 40, so a really nice physical profile, 14 reps on the bench press coming out of college. So he is a guy who's going to actually offer really nice high upside blocking for this running scheme in Buffalo, which is a huge positive. They already have a really nice blocking tight end in Dawson Knox, and now they have Gabe Davis on the outside, really shoring stirring up that outside zone run. He has a pretty fluid stop and start motion for his size when running double moves as well. But it really is that lack of consistency. I already alluded to it when I was saying at times he had good hands, at times he showed good technique with his hands, but he did have some drop issues last year. And of course, some people chalk this up to be the ankle injury, but of course you do not catch with your feet, you catch with your hands. I get it. Your feet and your lower body and the leverage that you put into the catch definitely has a lot to do with the catch, but at the end of the day, Gabriel Davis simply had some catch issues. I think of those big drops in the Jets game. I was actually in the crowd for that Jets game, and when they lost against the Jets at MetLife, Gabe Davis's big drop in that game was definitely a significant factor to why they lost. And then he also had a pretty significant heartbreaking drop in the Miami Dolphins game, which also caused the Buffalo Bills to lose that game. Diving into some more negatives though, he has pretty tight hips and he's not the most fluid, agile, shifty athlete out there at all. I would say he's a very below average after the catch guy. In fact, can Gabe Davis take a catch 98 yards like he's done in his career with Buffalo? Of course he can. He can definitely make a guy not be able to catch up to him because of his size and because of his speed. But is he a guy who's going to make a guy miss in the open field when you have 3 or 4 defenders nearby? Is he going to scratch that out for another 5-10 yards? Honestly, no. In my opinion, Gabriel Davis is genuinely one of the worst number 1 or 2 receivers in the entire National Football League when it comes to after the catch. He simply pretty much offers absolutely nothing in terms of yak. He also has a pretty limited route tree, but at times he's definitely shown the ability to be somewhat of a high-level separator on some of the routes he does run. His motor is not crazy high. He's a guy, even dating back to his college days, you look at his college profile and you look at what some scouts are saying out of him, out of Central Florida. A constant theme I kept seeing coming out of college for Gabriel Davis, and I think this is why he fell to the 4th round, is he just does not have a high motor. It seems as though when he knows for a fact the ball isn't going to come to him in a certain play, he kind of takes that play off, and I think that's definitely carried over to the NFL level with the Buffalo Bills thus far in his career. All in all, I think he'll have a very similar role, if not an increased role with the Buffalo Bills this season, again, considering the drama surrounding Stefon Diggs. And he presumably is going to go into this 2023 season a healthy man without that ankle injury. So if I had to give a prediction on what Gabriel Davis's career and specifically the 2023 season will look like for him, I think he's going to have about 60 catches, around 1,000 yards on about 7 touchdowns. Somewhat of a similar stat line to last year, but just slightly better. To me, that ankle injury isn't going to nag him, so the play-to-play consistency is going to be a little bit better from Gabe Davis. I think he's going to work on some of those concentration drops, but at the end of the day, at the end of the 2023 season, even though I do predict Gabe Davis to have a better year, I think the Buffalo Bills are going to move on from Gabriel Davis. And I think they're going to try to hit on a higher upside guy from the receiver position for that number 2 alongside Stefon Diggs. I think the Buffalo Bills really just desire a guy who can give Josh Allen a little bit more room to breathe in terms of a more flexible route tree, a more diverse route tree, and more importantly, a guy who could take a 3-yard stick route and make it a 10 to 15-yard gain once every 2 games. That's something that Gabriel Davis simply has not offered to this offense, and that is something that I think the Buffalo Bills will end up desiring. So again, I think Gabriel Davis has a solid, respectable season. I think he'll be a desirable target for trades or in free agency in the 2023 to 2024 free agency class. I just don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to be quite satisfied with an incremental increase in production for Gabe Davis. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me know in the comment section below, do you agree with my take that the Bills will look to move on from Gabe Davis despite having an increase in production in 2023? Again, thanks for listening, guys.